Good morning, Jake Livingston, planning operations for the Cameron Peak incident, and I'll give an update for September 3rd. Today the weather, it's a red flag warning for high winds and high temperatures and low RHs. Today up in the fire area we can expect temperatures to be in the high 60s to the lower 80s. Winds will be out of the west-northwest, 10 to 15, increasing to 15 to 25 in the afternoon, and then gusts reaching up to 30 miles an hour. The relative humidities will be 12 to 22% and dropping from the 22% level down toward 12 later on in the afternoon. So we'll keep an eye on that. And that will definitely increase some fire activity out there as the RHs go down, the temperatures rise, and the winds increase. Yesterday, the fire did have some increased activity, primarily just north of the tunnel area. Up on this high ridge line, there was an area of about 10 to 20 acres that became active burning primarily in a lot of beetle kill up in there, and it was just an indicator how there's still a lot of heat on this fire along the perimeter, hiding under the sheltered places. The fire still is at 6% containment here on the west side. I'll start out by talking about the structure groups. Structure group number 1, their primary area of operation is along the Highway 14 corridor. Today they'll be monitoring that activity that I mentioned in the vicinity of the tunnel or just east of it, and they'll be seeing if it starts to back down toward any of those structures and values at risk there. Structure group 2, 3, and 4, so Crystal Lakes, Redfeather Lakes, and Glacier View, they're operating up in that area. They are assessing still in that area. Additionally, they have started doing some prep work on some of the road systems in there, primarily just limbing and things like that, but they have not worked on private property yet. They're waiting for permission from landowners to do that. So Branch 5 Structure 4, in addition to the Glacier View, they also have some activities prepping along the Buckhorn Road out on the east side of the incident. Division Foxtrot, I've been talking a lot over the last several weeks about the indirect line up here between the Foxtrot Lima break near Crystal Lakes, heading toward Division Alpha. That line right there was completed yesterday with feller bunchers. However, there is a lot of cleanup to do using skidders. The feller bunchers cut all the trees and stacked them, but then they're using skidders to drag the logs and the other excess vegetation they cut out of there to a predetermined location, so it can be a control line. In Division Lima and Romeo, those indirect lines were complete, and they've started to focus their attention along with some of the Foxtrot resources down along the road systems in the Kilpecker radio tower area, with the intent to connect between the two. They're also looking at an option and starting to work on it off the 517 Alpha Road, and then there's the Visitor Center just up from Fire Station 2. That Visitor Center, there's a hand line going up the steep portion up to where it benches out, and where there'll be a dozer line from that point connecting to the 517 Alpha Road. So they're continuing that operation. Over in uniform, Crown Point Road, I mentioned the feller bunchers working along the portion of Crown Point Road closer to Pingree Park Road. They'll continue that operation. And we have the surge group further out Crown Point Road that is spiking out in the wilderness, using the natural features of those areas above timberline. And then there's some low saddles in there that they continue to work on. And they'll be working on that area for the next several days. And that brings us over to Division Whiskey Victor. Got the Long Draw Road here. It's Corral Creek drainage. In there we have the Alpine Hotshots using that natural riparian area. It's a fairly good opening. And as you follow that drainage up, it meets up with some avalanche chutes that come off of the tree line area. So the intent is to improve that natural feature, tied into the avalanche chute, improve those, and then they'll be tied into the higher elevations there. On the other side, off the Highway 14, Cameron Pass, Craggs Park area, the Hotshots did complete a hand line over the last several days in there. So the intent would be off a Long Draw Road, connect up the Corral Creek drainage to the hand line over on the other side toward Highway 14. They have identified an area to construct dozer line. That was with the state. So they've identified the line, but they've also developed trigger points on if this portion of the fire up to the north becomes active, and the trigger point was identified, so then they can put in the line. So they're holding off on that. We do have some feller buncher and skidder operations that were occurring up in the vicinity of the parking lot near the pass, and that's on hold right now, so we can work with the cooperators to find a location to put the trees, and just to make sure we're in agreement on where to put the line there. Division Whiskey is also monitoring the activity around Joe Wright Reservoir, and then along Long Draw Road, these values at risk out there. And then Barnes Lake and Chambers Lake, there's an island in there of unburnt vegetation with some values at risk, and they're continuing to monitor that. And then as far as Division Alpha Zulu, they're in monitor status. That's all prepped, and they'll just monitor this activity up on the northern portion of the fire. And night operations, that's ongoing. We have a presence out there throughout the night, just monitoring the activity in the Highway 14 corridor and on the south side of the fire in Division Whiskey. And today, as we do every day in the morning, we have a meeting with the sheriff and other cooperators discussing road closures and predicted weather, predicted fire behavior, and how we might be able to allow property owners access to their property in certain areas of the fire that we feel is safe. Thank you for your time.